Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and I work with a lot of individuals with attachment wounds. I work with a lot of avoidantly attached individuals, and today I wanted to go over some of the aspects that I notice when an avoidant feels authentic love for somebody. Now, I'm talking from a romantic perspective. From a research standpoint, there has been many types of love that we can kind of establish. However, more committed, compassionate love tends to have a lot of different attributes that come from a variety of different types of love. The best way for me to describe that is a lot of individuals may sometimes think passionate love, where it's very chemical, where it's very, passionate. It's very attached from the beginning, but it's not very fundamental, as in you may not necessarily know the person. You may just love how you feel. You may love the idea. You may feel like things are moving very fast. Some people describe it as very electric. And avoidance, they don't necessarily feel that way. They do, but usually in the beginning of the relationship, they put that on, that kind of front on, because they're ashamed that they struggle with love in general. But that type of aspect, they at least know that they can connect somewhat like that because they don't feel the deep sense of attachment necessarily in the beginning stages, right? However, a deep and authentic love, especially with an avoidant attachment, is very special to them. They value somebody that they attach deeply, which means that the chemistry is not necessarily the most fundamental and most important to them. They really like the aspects that come in later parts of the relationship, but that's the part which they tend to sabotage a lot, which is why it can be difficult and challenging for a relationship in general, but especially an avoidant relationship to get here. So I wanted to go over the aspects that an individual who's avoidantly attached is leaning that direction. Now, the reason why I wanted to make this video, because a lot of individuals or a lot of people have some misconceptions about love, including avoidant attachment individuals. Individuals who are avoidant, they have a very specific type of love, like a particular perspective of love, and it may not necessarily be healthy, but they do it in defense of their deep authentic feelings. They're trying to contradict it and counter it so that they don't have to really accept how they feel. I don't know if that made a lot of sense, but basically that's why this takes a lot of time, because they're afraid to admit that this is love, which it is. It just takes a lot longer. And they try and act like love is something else. They have a very specific, almost fairy tale perspective of love. And part of it is because they just don't know any better. But when they start feeling this way, this is when they start to sabotage, only because they subconsciously know this is healthier. It takes a lot longer. So I'm going to talk about all of these aspects of how an avoidant behaves towards you as a partner. Or if you're an avoidant, if you're noticing some of these signs, then yes, you're most likely feeling very deep and authentic love for your partner. And with avoidance, this doesn't come that often. It doesn't happen that often. They obviously they have a lot of measures and tactics so that this doesn't happen, because they're scared of it. And the reason why they're scared of it is because once avoidance, especially, once they feel like this, they become very, very attached to this person. A lot of avoidant individuals, believe it or not, when they were very young, and as a therapist, I know this because they share it with me. When they were young, they were very loving. Sometimes they were even called sensitive by their parent, which was incorrectly labeled because it was from a negative perspective. They felt like they cared too much. And so their caregiver shunned them a lot typically. And so from the depth of their core, when they get attached, they love very, very strongly, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and express and share some of these aspects with you. So the first one is honesty, even when it hurts. An avoidant individual, when they feel like they do like being honest, but sometimes they're afraid of your repercussions. So they get afraid to be honest. So they're even honest when it may hurt your feelings, even if you may have a reaction, because they feel like they respect you enough to give you the truth. So they're not going to sugarcoat it. They're going to tell you what it is or why they don't want certain things, even if it upsets you. So that's number one. Number two is they show that they respect you for who you are. And that can even be things that they might not necessarily like about you, but they may start learning from that. So let's say you're very picky about, I don't know, doing the dishes right after you eat. And maybe they're not as picky about that. They still respect the aspect that you like to have things done a certain way. And sometimes they may even tell you or compliment you on that aspect, even though they might not like it necessarily. They still respect who you are, and they just respect you in general. They tell you that you're very intelligent. They tell you that you dress well, you're put together, you're very kind. They'll show aspects that they respect you. The third one is that they are vulnerable with you, so they'll share some of their frustration. They'll tell you some things that they're not so happy with. They'll tell you things that you might not realize is vulnerable. Like like a patient, I'll change it, of course. Basically, it's an example. What I'm about to share is, some patients may share, when I was little, my favorite game was X, Y, and Z, right? Whatever that game may be. You might not feel that as vulnerable, but that's very vulnerable because avoidants don't like sharing things, right? Or they may say, today, this year has been really frustrating with my taxes. I'm still waiting on this document. It's taking too long. And I don't like to wait, last minute to file my taxes. I like to get them out of the way. So they're sharing things that they don't always tell people. You might not think of it like that, but being vulnerable is a huge sign that they have a deep, authentic love for you. The next one, and this is pretty common with avoidants in general, but they're action-oriented instead of hollow with their words, right? So what does action-oriented mean? All that it means is instead of giving you gestures or promises, false promises, they're actually doing something. I actually want to give an example of this one because it can be a little confusing, and I can understand that. So let's say an avoidant and their partner had a fight. Let's give an example. Let's say he's dismissive avoidant, partner is fearful avoidant, and they got into a fight. They both are kind of deactivating, maybe not saying the best things that they wanted to, and he accidentally curses. Maybe he doesn't curse at her, but he says, this is just so, whatever, frustrating. Insert curse word, right? So he cursed. And he raised his voice, and he felt terrible about it, right? And he doesn't normally curse, and he doesn't typically raise his voice. So this is not something he likes to hear about himself. And he saw in his partner's eyes and her reaction that she kind of shut down and pulled away. And he knows that that's one of her triggers, loud noises, feeling like she did something wrong. So she's starting to shut down in the argument, and he starts feeling really bad. So he's feeling still defensive, but his defense is actually shut off because he sees that he hurt her. He apologizes, but instead of begging and saying, I promise I'm never, ever going to do that again, he does say, that was on me. I'm going to work hard to not do this and pay attention to my stressors. But what he does throughout the days is he starts telling her what's going on at work more because he realized me not opening up about my stressors is causing me to be more angry and lash out at her and say things that I don't want to ever say. I don't ever want to curse. He didn't curse at her in this example, but he still used the word. And he doesn't want to be a person that frightens her, right? And I'm not saying cursing at your partner is a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not saying that. Never stay with anybody who scares you or treats you poorly. I'm just giving an example. And that made him think, okay, I'm going to continue to tell her what's going on with my day and what I'm doing that's causing me stress. And so that at least she knows what's going on as well as I can open up and get it off my chest. He also is, starting to implement different stress strategies so that he does not ever do that again because it really hurt him. So that's action oriented instead of begging and saying, I'm never going to do that again. You'll see, please don't, leave me, whatever. He probably has those fears inside, but instead he decided, I'm going to suck it up. I know I did this and I'm going to make it right. Right. And then the very last one is consistency. This one is very, very common when an avoidant feels authentic love for you. They're very consistent. That means they answer the text messages after a certain time. Not all the time. It just depends on your partner what their consistency means. Maybe every morning they tell you good morning, or every day before bed they call you for 5 minutes. Whatever it is, they're very consistent. They're always showing you that you are important they don't know always how to show people, but they do it in a very regimented way instead of maybe a more emotional way, which a lot of people, it's hard for them to realize. But if you're regimented into their schedule and their lifestyle, you're pretty much here to stay. That's how they look at it, because avoidants are very picky about their schedule. And if they put you in their schedule, you matter a lot. They very much deeply love you. And sometimes avoidants don't always know they love you right away. But once they open up and express that, they're able to recognize, okay, I've loved, my partner for a while, and these are the reasons why. So these are signs that they love you or are going to love you. And it's very deep and authentic. Just something I wanted to share. I hope this makes sense. Please subscribe, like, and I'll see you in the next one.